Welcome to another video from the Winshill Gospel Hall, and we're continuing our study through the book of Joshua, and today's reading is Joshua chapter 3 and reading from verse 11. Joshua chapter 3 and reading from verse 11. Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth passeth over before you into Jordan. Now therefore take you 12 men out of the tribes of Israel, out of every tribe a man, and it shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of Jordan, that the waters of Jordan shall be cut off from the waters that come down from above, and they shall stand upon a heap. Verse 15, and as they that bear the ark were come unto Jordan, and the feet of the priests that bear the ark were dipped in the brim of the water, for the Jordan overfloweth all of his banks all the time of harvest, that the waters which came down from above and stood up upon an heap very far from the city of Adam, that is beside Zaratan, and those that came down towards the sea of the plain, even the salt sea, failed, and were cut off, and the people passed over right against Jericho. And the priests that bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of Jordan, and all the Israelites passed over on dry ground, until all the people were passed clean over Jordan. I just want to bring four things to your attention today as we think about the nation that prepare to go over the Jordan. This was no small task. This would be testing their faith, no doubt about that. And this wasn't just a small river that they were to get over, or just a stream or trickle of water. The information we're given in verse 15 is that the Jordan overfloweth all his banks all the time of harvest. And so this is going to be a major task. Now, the first thing I want to notice is the emphasis upon the ark, the presence of the ark. We've mentioned this before, which speak to us of the presence of God. And we have different descriptions of the ark in these verses. First of all, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth. We have it described as the ark of the Lord, the ark of the covenant, the ark, or the ark of the covenant of the Lord. And so different mentions of the ark through these verses, which would indicate the presence of God to us and the importance of that and the role that was going to play in this work of going over, the task of going over the Jordan. As something else, the second thing I wanted to mention is the fact that the tremendous statement which is mentioned here in two of these verses. You'll notice in verse 11 it says, behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth. What a tremendous statement that is. The Lord of all the earth passeth over before you into Jordan. We have that statement again in verse 13. These are the only two occasions that we find it mentioned in Joshua. It shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth shall rest in the waters of Jordan. That statement is only mentioned on 4 other occasions through Scripture. Sometimes the Lord of all the earth, or the Lord of the whole earth, mentioned in Psalm 97 and Micah 4 and Zechariah 4 and 6, chapter 4 and chapter 6. And so these are the first two things that we wanted to mention, the presence of the ark and also this wonderful statement, the Lord of all the earth. The third thing I wanted to mention is the fact of what it mentions about the waters of the Jordan and how they would be cut off. Notice what it says in verse 13. It shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of Jordan, that the waters of Jordan shall be cut off from the waters that come down from above, and they shall stand upon a heap. So the waters were going to be cut off, and they would stand upon an heap. The thought is really the waters were going to be completely cut off. They were going to completely fail and stand upon a heap. They were going to stand firm. These waters, this mighty river of Jordan, which overfloweth its banks all the time of harvest, is going to be cut off. And they're going to stand firm, stand as a heap. But then in verse 16 we have a further description of what the waters were going to do. That the waters which came down from above stood and rose up upon an heap very far from the city Adam, that is beside Zaratan, and those that came down toward the sea of the plain, even the salt sea, failed and were cut off, and the people passed right over against Jericho. So again, the fact of them standing, these waters stood up. The thought is upright and firm, and they rose up upon a heap. This is the thought of them being fixed. So tremendous statements and descriptions are used for the waters as the children of Israel were going to pass over the Jordan. The final thing I want to mention is the fact of the feet of the priests. Again, different descriptions are given here in these verses. Notice verse 13. It shall come to pass as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of Jordan. The soles of the feet shall rest in the brim of the waters. Then also in verse 15 we have the feet mentioned again of the priests. As they that bear the ark were come unto Jordan, and the feet of the priests that bear the ark were dipped in the brim of the water. Dipped in the brim of the water. So the soles of the feet in verse 13 shall rest in the water. Now the feet of the priests that bear the ark were dipped in the brim of the water. But notice we have the priests' feet mentioned again in verse 17. And the priests that bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan. And all the Israelites passed over on dry ground until all the people were passed clean over Jordan. So here we have the priests now standing firm in the midst of Jordan. The Jordan dried up, the water's gone back upon a heap, standing firm, standing fixed, and the children of Israel were able to pass over the Jordan into the land. You know, when we think of the children of Israel as they passed over the Red Sea, we're thinking of people who have been redeemed. A people brought out, a lamb has been slain and blood has been shed. And a people brought out and redeemed out of the bondage of Egypt. But now when we're thinking of the Jordan, we're now thinking of a people entering into the blessings of all that God had promised them. And as we think of this wonderful passage of Scripture, as we think of the children of Israel going over the Jordan, what it speaks to us of is the power of God and also the promises of God that they would be fulfilled. This was really as the feet of the priests were to step the very first time into the Jordan, as the soles of their feet would touch that water, the feet of the priests would go into the brim of the water. What a step of faith. And yet as a result of it, they entered into the blessings, and the feet of the priests we then find they're standing on dry ground. What a wonderful passage of Scripture. And so are we prepared as we live our life, even in this situation we find ourselves in at the moment, to take that next step, as the priest did, a step of faith, because the river, it overfloweth all of his banks all the time of harvest. It seemed impossible, yet it was only the hand of God and the promises of God and the power of God that they were able to take that step and put their feet into the Jordan. I wonder whether we're prepared to take that next step of faith, to stand firm on the promises of God. Well, might someone pen those words and say, where he may lead me, I will go, for I have learned to trust him so. Trust these things might be an encouragement to us as we continue to serve the Lord. Thank you very much for joining us, and please look out for more videos from the Winshill Gospel Hall as we continue our studies through the book of Joshua. Thanks very much for joining us.